Yamunatira vanachari. Yamunatira vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Shota Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Grantharan Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to you, Srila Prabhupada. So thanks for coming to class. I'm very nervous, so please be kind. So we're reading from the 7th canto, which is it the science of, what does it say? But the canto is called The Science of God. And this chapter is, the Supreme Lord is equal to everyone. So we're very fortunate to be in this Hare Krishna movement. We actually have information about why bad things happen to good people. We have information about how the Lord is actually equal to all of us. This is a question that was never satisfactorily answered for me in other faiths. And it's my appreciation of this particular canto, that we actually have a science of understanding God. We have a method to remove the things that are holding us back from devotional service. And Srila Prabhupada has brought it to us. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so verse 27. Let's do word for word first so I can get this right. Yata, as. Vaira anubandhena, by constant enmity. Martyaha, a person. Tat mayatam, absorption in him. Iyat, may obtain. Na, not. Tata, in a like manner. Bhakti yogena, by devotional service. Iti, thus. Me, my. Nischita, definite. Matihi, opinion. Yata vairanhu bandhena martyastan mayatam yat na tata bhakti yogena iti me nistita matihi. Yata vairanu bandhena martyastan mayatam yat na tata bhakti yogena iti me nisita mitihi. Yata vairanhu bandhena martyastan mayatam iyat na tata bhakti yogena iti me nishtita mitihi. Yata vairanhu bandhena martyastam mayatam iyat na tata bhakti yogena iti me nishtita mitihi. Yata vairanhu bandhena martyastan mayatam iyat yatata bhakti yogena iti me nishtita matihi. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki. Narada Muni continued, by devotional service, one cannot achieve such intense absorption in thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as one can through enmity towards Him. That is my opinion. Srimad Narada Muni, the topmost pure devotee, praises Krishna's enemies like Shishupal because they're... This is the purport. Srimad Narada Muni, the topmost pure devotee, praises Krishna's enmities like Shishupal because their minds are always completely absorbed in Krishna. Indeed, he thinks himself deficient in the inspiration of being feelingly absorbed in Krishna consciousness. This does not mean, however, that the enemies of Krishna are more elevated than Krishna's pure devotees. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila 5.205, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami also thinks of himself in such a humble way. Jaghai Madhai Hate Munyi Se Papishita Purisera Kita Hate Muni Se Laghishta. I am a worse sinner than Jagai and Madhai, and am even lower than the worms in the stool. A pure devotee always thinks himself more deficient than everyone else. If a devotee approaches Srimati Radharani for some service to Krishna, even Srimati Radharani thinks that the devotee is greater than she. Thus, Narada Muni says that according to his opinion, the enemies of Krishna are better situated because they are fully absorbed in thoughts of Krishna in terms of killing him, just as a very lusty man always thinks of women and their association. The essential point in this connection is that one should be fully absorbed in thoughts of Krishna 24 hours a day. There are many devotees in Raga Marga, which is exhibited in Vrindavan. Whether in Dasya Rasa, Sakya Rasa, Vatsalya Rasa, or Madhurya Rasa, all the devotees of Krishna are always overwhelmed by thoughts of Krishna. When Krishna is away from Vrindavan, tending the cows in the forest, the gopis in the Madhurya Rasa are always absorbed in thoughts of how Krishna walks in the forest. The soles of his feet are so soft that the gopis would not dare keep his lotus feet on their soft breasts. Indeed, they consider their breasts a very hard place for the lotus feet of Krishna, yet those lotus feet wander in the forest, which is full of thorny plants. The gopis are absorbed in such thoughts at home, although Krishna is away from them. Similarly, when Krishna plays with his young friends, Mother Yashoda is very much disturbed by thoughts that Krishna, because of always playing and not taking his food properly, must be getting weak. These are examples of the exalted ecstasy felt in Krishna's service as manifested in Vrindavan. This service is indirectly praised by Narada Muni in this verse. Especially for the conditioned soul, Narada Muni recommends that one somehow or other be absorbed in thoughts of Krishna, for that will save one from all the dangers of material existence. Full absorption in thoughts of Krishna is the highest platform of bhakti yoga. Om Ajnana Timlanasa Jnana Shlakya Chakshur Lamitamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mino Bhishtam Stapitam Vena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Karamahim Bhakti Swamparantika Vanchakalpa Trubhastra Kiprasindhuve Vachapatitana Bhavane Pyo Vaishnave Pyo Namo Namaha Amma Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamniti Namine Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadesh Tarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So I guess I'd like to ask for the blessings of all the assembled Vaishnavas for giving me such an opportunity. It's not something that I imagine would happen, but I'm really grateful for it. I think that having the opportunity to speak in this way really enhanced my study, first of all. I've been reading like I haven't for a long time. And also it helps to solidify some of the ideas that we've been hearing for so long if we can actually speak them to someone else. See, I am a foolish person and actually volunteered for this because I saw that all the brahmacharis were being asked to do it, and I was a little envious. I was thinking, like, don't they know how long I've been coming to this temple? They've been coming for, 6-8 months now, they're giving class. But I'm a very envious person. I'm envious of the way that devotees sing so nicely and they have such vast scriptural knowledge. And in cases like Jaya Jagannath, it can actually help. Like, I can come to him with any problem, and he has scripture to cite that's somehow relevant to my situation and can help me. And that's sort of where I wanted to start. So when I was first coming to temple, well, first I want to say I'm very glad that Subhakrit Prabhu is back, staying in the temple with us. I remember one time he was giving class, Bhagavad Gita class, and it was a verse, there are two kinds of intelligence in men, material intelligence and spiritual intelligence. And so I raised my hand, I knew nothing. So I said, isn't there such a thing as a man with no intelligence? And Krishna Smarprabhu thought that was hysterical. But I don't think that Supakrit understood the question. And I've realized since then that the man with material intelligence is the one who has no intelligence. That is my realization. But so when I was first coming to temple, there was another devotee that I became very envious of. And this was at a time there weren't so many devotees in the temple, so every day after Bhagavatam class, I would approach Jaya Jagannath. We would talk for 20, 30 minutes, to the point where I could almost see in his face that maybe he was getting a bit exhausted by all this. But I had new doubts every other day. And I'm a very emotional person, so I would sort of overreact. And this is definitely a case of that. So I was envious of this particular devotee because he was living in the temple, because he was starting to sing songs very nicely, and I wanted to be able to do those things. And I can see now that when you're envious of someone, really you're absorbed in thoughts of yourself. You're not really even absorbed in thoughts of the person you're envious of. It's like, why don't I have those things? I would want those opulences. I want those benedictions. So I came to Jaya, literally in tears over this. There's no explanation. But envy is truly I'll get to it. So I explained the situation, and he told me, well, I had just learned this word anartas, and so I was happy to be using it. I said that this anarta of jealousy must be the absolute worst one I have. It's the one I want to deal with the most also. Looking back at my different material relationships, I could see how envy had gotten in the way so many times. And of all my qualities, it's the one I disliked the most. And so I said this to Jaya, and his response was that actually this is the root anartha for all of us, because we are jealous of the Supreme Lord, we're envious, and so we've fallen down here to pretend that we can be like him. And this was a turning point in my Krishna consciousness. It's when the philosophy started to make sense. And there was some hope there that like there's actually a cure within this tradition. There's a cure for envy. There's a cure for envy. This is mind-blowing. This is something that destroys nations. Right now, they're fighting over nuclear weapons. Who gets to have nuclear weapons? They're envious of other countries that have nuclear weapons. Eventually, there will be no more world to worry about. So I asked him, what is the possible treatment for this? And he told me to offer some practical service. That was the last answer I wanted to hear, was to serve the person that I had such enmity towards. But I did it. And so I've heard Prabhupada describe this as like rock candy for jaundice. If you have jaundice, the treatment apparently is rock candy, although it tastes very bitter to the person afflicted by jaundice. So although it doesn't feel so good to serve the person you dislike, I have found it very useful. And I began to understand that this, again, is the foundation of Krishna consciousness. We're envious of the Lord, and so we offer some practical service to his servants. And this some way purifies our disposition, our motivations. And he also suggested meditating on the good qualities of devotees on a regular basis. Appreciation is something that has to be practiced. It does not just come naturally. And practicing means like going through in your mind, meditating, what are the different qualities that these devotees have? Isn't it so nice the Lord has decorated them with such nice qualities? Any quality that we see in anyone else is a reflection of spiritual qualities in the spiritual world. So when we are envious of another devotee, who are we actually envious of? We're envious of the Lord. These are all his opulences, which he's letting other people reflect for a while. And even our envy, I assume, must be a reflection of something in the spiritual world. Maybe someone wants to comment on that after I'm done, because I'm not exactly sure what that would be. So this might be a little haphazard, because I have all these books and I don't know what I'm doing. So please bear with me. But for some reason, I have this bookmarked at this point. Oh yeah, okay. So in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, all created things have their source in these two natures, as spiritual and material. Of all this that is material and all that is spiritual in this world, know for certain that I am both the origin and the dissolution. O conqueror of wealth, there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. I am the taste of water, the light of the sun and the moon. I am the original fragrance of the earth. I am heat and fire. I am the original seed of all existences, the intelligence of the intelligent, and the prowess of all powerful men. This is the point I wanted to get to, that Krishna is the intelligence in the intelligent, the prowess of powerful men. So when we're envious of those particular qualities, we're actually envious of the Lord. It's as simple as that. And I began to realize that no matter which problems I came to Jaya with, the answer was somehow putting my supposed problem in relationship with God. I would say, I have a problem with this person, I have a problem with this, with this, with this, with that. And he would explain to me that, no, you have a problem with God. This has become a very easy formula to try to find a spiritual solution to our material problems, and to find a spiritual solution for our spiritual problems, and to avoid trying to make a material solution for our spiritual problems. Let's see. So, as devotees, that means this cure of practical service means serving one another under the guidance of the spiritual master. We're all parts and parcels of Krishna, so when we serve each other in a favorable way, we're also serving the Lord. When we serve each other, we assist the spiritual master in his worship of the deities. So many devotees do such a nice job of dressing the deities, cleaning the altar so nicely. And this is all assisting the spiritual master in his worship of the Lord. What is our actual situation, though? I really like this verse from the last canto. Samsara chakra e tasmin jantur ajnana mohitaha brahmyan sukham chadukam cha bhunkte sarvatra sarvada. So everywhere and always, we're just running into the results of our karmic activity, and we label them as happiness or distress, but really we're just caught in this endless cycle of repeated birth and death. And the place we want to get to is Om Ajnanatim Landasya. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but the spiritual master, he is enlightened me with a torchlight of knowledge. So when we take the directions from the spiritual master and we interact with devotees the way that would please him, we please the Lord, and he's satisfied. And also our impurities are nullified. So I want to discuss a little bit of what it would be like to actually be absorbed in thoughts of Krishna, as opposed to, say, we're envious, upset in this world, we're absorbed in thoughts of ourselves. So in the second chapter, this is text 54, Arjuna asks, O Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? That's the translation of the word samadhi. How does he speak? What is his language? How does he sit and how does he walk? So the Supreme Personality of Godhead responds, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification which arise from mental concoction, when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. So we can see how the spiritual master is not affected by the results of his karma anymore. He's acting from a position of freedom, and he offers us regulative principles of freedom, which at first can seem distracting, but really when we cut out those things from our lives, it's like it gives such incredible freedom. And in this way, the activities of the spiritual master are truly causeless mercy, because he's not propelled by his past actions like we are. Instead, he is propelled by love of Krishna. And one way to enter into this mood is by studying and singing the songs of the acharyas. And the song we sing in the morning is such a beautiful description of assisting the spiritual master in his worship of the deities. Spiritual master is always engaged in chanting the names of the Lord. And this can be a very difficult thing, though. What does it mean to be like absorbed 24 hours in chanting? I would like to describe a little bit of what that's like in the spiritual world at some point, but for us, that means in the absolutes. This is from the introduction to Bhagavad Gita. Actually, I really love this sort of essay. When Srila Prabhupada, at first when he came to America, he had association with one yogi, a supposed sannyasi, who dressed in very nice suits, and he preached to the older women, and they gave him money for it. At first, Prabhupada stayed with him, and then later he was moved down to a small little office with no windows or anything, because his philosophy and that of this other yogi did not jive so much. Dr. Mishra's Yoga Society. So one of Dr. Mishra's students, this is Prabhupada. He built a house in which the whole world can live by Satsvarupa Das Goswami. One of Mishra's students had donated a reel-to-reel tape recorder, and Bhaktivedanta Swami recorded some of his solitary bhajans, which he sang to his own accompaniment of hand cymbals. He also recorded a long philosophical essay, Introduction to Gita Upanishad. So that's what became the introduction to Bhagavad Gita here. At first it was published separately. If no one attends, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had told him, you can go on chanting to the four walls. But since he was now free to speak this message in his new situation which God had provided, he decided to lecture 3 evenings a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, to whomever would come. So sitting in a room with a tape recorder, he recorded off the top of his head this incredible essay, which gives us so much information about the different relationships in the spiritual world and how to practice and remember God. So in this essay, he says, therefore we have to practice remembering the Lord always, 24 hours a day, by chanting his names and molding our lives' activities in such a way that we can remember him always. How is this possible? The Acharyas give the following example. If a married woman is attached to another man, or if a man is very strong, one with such an attachment is always thinking of the loved one. The wife who is thinking of her lover is always thinking of meeting him, even while she is carrying out her household chores. In fact, she carries out her household work even more carefully so her husband will not suspect her attachment. Similarly, we should always remember the Supreme Lover, Sri Krishna, and at the same time perform our material duties very nicely. A strong sense of love is required here. If we have a strong sense of love for the Supreme Lord, then we can discharge our duty and at the same time remember him. So, like, in the temple, we have the opportunity to clean the floor, wash pots and pans. This is not does not seem to be the same activities that, say, the gopis perform. They make nice garlands for Krishna. They offer them, then one gopi will bring it to the Lord, and they can maybe watch from a distance. We're just washing pots and pans. But by washing pots and pans, we get some little taste of what it's like to keep working in this world, but remember the Supreme Lord. So as long as we're doing things that are the instructions of the spiritual master, his representatives, we're actually engaged in pastimes of the Lord, if I understand this correctly. Srila Prabhupada is a dear associate of Lord Chaitanya who spread the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra all across the world. He's clearly an associate of Lord Chaitanya. So we associate with Srila Prabhupada's movements, and therefore we are engaged in Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. Whenever we chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, we say the Panchatattva mantra first, and this helps us enter into the particular mood of Lord Chaitanya before we chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. If we remember this, then perhaps we can get some taste of what it's like to associate with Lord Chaitanya directly by going through the streets, chanting his glories, things like this. I've sort of gone off track, I think. So I would like to talk about something Lakshmi Moni brought up, which is that Narada Muni, in this verse, he's praising the qualities of the demons over the devotees because the demons are always fully absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. What I feel that Narada Muni is doing here is, and as Prabhupada explains in the purport, devotees are so kind that they can overlook so many disqualifications and somehow see like the few good qualities in us. So even looking at the demons, Narada Muni is saying like they are fully absorbed, constantly absorbed in thoughts of Krishna, and this is his praise. So similarly, Srila Prabhupada came to America, and all he saw, all that I would have seen are disqualifications. But Lakshmi Moni made this wonderful point that we had one qualification, and that was that we had become disinterested in material activities. And fortunately, Srila Prabhupada was there to provide spiritual activities instead of just drugs and such. Instead of preaching to these older, wealthier women, Prabhupada decided to move down to the Bowery. We can't imagine what that's like. It was just homeless people on top of homeless people, sleeping in the street, coming down from crazy drugs. Srila Prabhupada was attacked on a couple occasions. He was living with this young boy that he wanted to bring back to Vrindavan, and he thought he was going to be like, his first disciple, really, who attacked Srila Prabhupada in the middle of the night one night. And Srila Prabhupada had to have all his friends come and remove all his belongings and move away to a different location. But he had so much, he was so willing to overlook our disqualifications and just hope upon hope that Krishna would somehow provide an opportunity to purify us. So there's one particular example. One bum, a homeless bum, interrupted one of Srila Prabhupada's classes. This is from the Hare Krishna Explosion by Hayagriva Das. Interrupting the lecture, an old white-bearded Bowery bum enters and walks down the middle of the room. We sit in confused silence. He approaches the Swami. What to do? The old beggar is wearing a raincoat and battered hat. In his hands are paper towels, hand towels, and 2 rolls of toilet paper. Without speaking, he walks past the Swami and carefully places the hand towels by the sink and the toilet paper on the floor beneath. Then, clearing his throat and muttering something, he turns and walks out. Just see, the Swami says with satisfaction. He may not be in order, but he has just begun his devotional service. Just see how naturally it comes. That is the process. Whatever we have, it doesn't matter what, we must offer it to Krishna. So here, like, a literal drunk comes in and interrupts Srila Prabhupada's class, but to offer some service. And that's all that Srila Prabhupada actually sees, is that, like, some service is offered, and he praises that. Satsvarupa, like, also points out that the room just stank of this man. He was so filthy. But Prabhupada didn't focus on the fact that his body was filthy, because he was confident that once they took to the chanting of the Maha Mantra, that the other regulative principles would follow naturally. So what has Srila Prabhupada given us by giving us devotional service? He gives us entryway into the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, into the mood of the gopis. And I guess in that respect, I want to read a little something from the songs of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So this is from Gitavali. I serve the divine young couple, Kishore Kishori, under the order of my superior Sakhi. I consider myself a dependent maidservant of their lordships and always meditate upon their lotus feet. Sometimes they mercifully hold my hands and speak sweet words to me. Sometimes take betel nuts from me, and sometimes they happily accept flower garlands that are offered by me. On some pretext or other, they suddenly disappear, and by not seeing them, my whole body burns due to separation. Let them stay wherever they please. I am simply a maidservant at their lotus feet. I treat both the happiness derived from meeting them and the distress of their separation as equal. I think I'm just going to skip the rest of this. I wanted to give some vision or some insight of what it's like to serve in this mood in the spiritual world, but I just have so many bookmarks that I no longer even know what to do with myself. So does someone have some comment they want to make about what I've spoken about already? I did want to talk a bit about the Parakiya rasa. The gopis are constantly thinking about Krishna, even in separation. Oh, so this is why I read from Introduction to Bhagavad Gita. What I feel that Prabhupada is describing there is parakya rasa, is that they're always engaged, no matter what the activity is, you're thinking of the Supreme Lord. Yeah, so any comments so far?
Sure, Hare Krishna. In case the class is not over, or if it is, wonderful class. But I'll help you stall in case it's not over. Just as you helped me stall when I did my class, so I appreciate it. So you made really nice points, especially the beginning that I think all of us could resonate with, as far as envy is concerned, because that's why we're all in this material world. So you made many good points. Is that our envy is basically due to our envy towards God, just like, God's given everyone our intelligence, our abilities, our brain, our abilities. And when we're envious of someone else, that's simply a reflection of our envy towards God, because he's actually doing everything. So I really appreciate that point. And I think it's very nice, when sometimes devotees, it's very difficult to kind of admit, sometimes we're envious because we're not humble. We don't want to let people know, I'm not perfect. Just like me and Chaitanya Priyo, Prabhu was joking the other day, a few days ago, is that, it's nice to see devotees, not give, let's say, quote unquote, perfect classes all the time, just like me. Like my memory is not as good as, I started one of my classes off, but like you did, by naming all the people I was envious of. Mm-hmm. I think I named Nityananda Pran, Jagadananda Prabhu, my brother, pretty much all the good Bhagavatam speakers, because in a joking way, because we were joking, this is funny, our memory is so bad, I wish I could give a brilliant class, but the thing is, you can't, and if you joke about it, but if we take these things seriously and not joke about them, then we're in trouble, then we'll always be miserable. But that's why I like to, that's why there's innumerable comedy skits you can make, based on our, mentality. So those are some of the points I was appreciating. And just like Narada Muni here, he's actually glorifying the devotion of Shishapad as, better than him. So that's the antidote to envy. Always putting other devotees in the spotlight instead of yourself. Even, he's putting the demons in the spotlight. So those are the really points I appreciate it. And one last point before you would like to continue. I'm not sure if you found your point, but I was joking with Chaitanya Priyo one time about Vyasadeva. He's known as the compiler of the Vedas. He's given that, that high prestige. But actually, it's said that Ganesh is actually the one who wrote the Vedas down, and Vyasadeva spoke of. But Ganesh wasn't envious, why does he get all the credit? Why is the seat called the Vyasa sign and not the Ganesha sign? Mm-hmm. So these many jokes you can make about how all devotees are always putting others in the spotlight instead of themselves, and this is the antidote to envy, So I was appreciating some of those points you made at the beginning. So if you'd like to continue, I was just trying to help you out. I didn't really have anything to say. I'm just kind of rambling.
Thank you. I'll read one more thing, at least. So this is actually, I really like this because it's a description of Kishore Kishori. The divine young couple, Shri Shri Radha Krishna, or Kishore Kishori, are sitting on a throne bedecked with jewels underneath a desire tree, and they are surrounded by the gopis. The brightly shining gold ornaments, studded with diamonds and pearls, which are worn by the divine couple, illuminate their entire bodies. They appear like a dark blue cloud encircled by a garland of lightning. Their body effulgence illuminates the entire universe. During the arti, conch shells were blown, bells were rung, and kartals and mridangas were played very sweetly. All of them together produced a most pleasing sound. The gopis, headed by Vishaka, constantly sang the glories of the divine couple, and the Priya Narma gopis fanned their lordships with chamaras. Sri Anangamandri applied specially scented sandalwood pulp to their lordships, and Sri Rupamandri offered them a garland of jasmine flowers. Placing ghee wicks and camphor in a ghee lamp, the beautiful Lalita Shaki offered arati to the divine couple. The demigoddesses, Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, and the personified Vedas roll on the ground in ecstasy while singing the glories of the gopis' exalted position. Residing at Sarabi Kunj, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur relishes ecstatic love while beholding the blissful arati of their lordship, Sri Sri Radha Krishna. And then this song is immediately followed by the song we sing in the evening, Jaya Gaura Chandir, which is, again, another beautiful description of worshiping their lordships, this time on the Ganges. So I also like this particular song. It reminded me of Bhakta Michael because he spends so much time in the Tulsi room. And the part of the reason I like it is I really appreciate it when the activities that we do here are not so different than the ones that we're going to be doing in the spiritual world. This is from Sharanagati. O Krishna, today I will give up my pride as an enjoyer and instead become your maidservant. O beloved Lord of Radha, I wish to engage in your service in the forest of Vrindavan under the guidance of the gopis. So you see that even in the spiritual world, we don't get to just do whatever we want. The gopis are there to guide us. I will prepare beautiful garlands of flowers and tulsi manjaris, which is what Michael does at least once a week. After preparing the garland, I will offer it with devotion to a gopi, who will then accept it with great affection. So you see, you don't even get to offer it directly to their lordships in the spiritual world. You offer it to a gopi, and the gopi has to approve of it. The gopi will then offer the garland to their lordships, Sri Sri Radha and Krishna, and I will happily watch them from a distance. The gopi will then say, "Listen, O beautiful one, stay with me in my cottage as my maidservant. You should daily prepare enchanting flower garlands for Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. Now it is my responsibility to look after you. My grove is now your residence as well. When I engage in the service of Sri Sri Radha Krishna, you should stay with me by my side and assist me. You will place betel nuts mixed with camphor on a plate and bring it to me." After hearing the gopis' statements, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur offers his respectful obeisances to their lotus feet. Is there anything else that anyone wants to correct or comment on?
There was this fella here a few years ago. His name was Melvin Weeks, and he'd be 80 years old now. He was in jail for 39 years, and we were talking out in the lobby, and he goes, "You know, my dad was the guy that gave Prabhupada the toilet paper." And I said, "Well, how old is your dad?" And he said, "Well, he's dead now, but when was he born?" 1919, so that would have made him about 46 years old. But then I'm thinking, wow, he had him when he was like 16. So I don't know if it was a true story or not, but it just came out of there. And he said, yeah, my father was a terrible alcoholic. And, he had some bad qualities too. But anyways, I just thought I'd bring that up, and then, he went to New Vrindavan, and he'd been back there a few times, and he's been in and out of nursing homes. And there was this devotee that used to be here, about 30 years ago, and he had a real alcohol problem also. And then when Melvin went to New Vrindavan, this devotee treated him real bad. And Melvin, had to go back into the hospital. So then I get a call, a few months ago, and that this devotee that abused Melvin died, And so I was just thinking, wow, a lot of things going on, But it just came to mind, since you brought up the toilet paper thing.
I often wonder what happens to these characters who just appear for a couple pages in the Lamrita and you never hear from them again. Especially the people that took advantage of the devotees because of how young they were, how inexperienced they were. Do you have something else?
I missed one of your last points. You said the devotees offered the gopis the garlands first, then they offered them to Krishna. So there's a verse that reminded me of that. I was actually looking at it the other day. It's from the 7th canto, chapter 14, verse 39. Prabhupada mentions in that purport that better than a worship of Vishnu is the worship of the Vaishnavas. There's a verse from the Padma Purana that states that. And so, sorry, my throat. Had a lot of pizza in the past few days, sorry. Can't even talk. So I was meditating on this point because sometimes there's sometimes disagreements between, of course in Kali Yuga, but Chaitanya Priya Prabhu made a really nice point the other day is that, you know, the disagreements we have among devotees, they're actually so sweet compared to, suppose we try to distribute a book, then we'll see that we're, you know, really, you know, crap, you know, people ignore us, you know, they criticize us. Then when we come back here and, you know, we actually develop a more gratitude and appreciation with devotees and not let, you know, these disagreements, you know, get too overwhelming. Because actually, if there was no disagreements between devotees, then if everyone agreed with us 100% of the time, then there's no meaning to the word tolerance, forgiveness, or mercy. If everyone disagrees, you can't express your forgiveness to someone who agrees with you all the time or your tolerance. So these are considered saintly qualities, and I've kind of recognized that. And one last
we
have
variety in this world because there's variety in the spiritual world.
Yeah.
When I first came to Krishna consciousness, I was under the false impression that through practice, devotees just become all the same, I guess. And then in the end, they all wind up behaving the same way, but that's definitely not true. It's clearly not true.
Absolutely. That's what the scriptures describe. Like, they give so many examples of what a devotee is. Vritrashura, even Prahlad, from externally, a 5-year-old boy is not a, you know, spiritual prodigy, but you can't judge him by the externals. Or just like Nishingadev, he's considered the god, and Hiranyakashipu is the demon. So I remember asking one person, did you see that picture of Nishingadev? He was like, oh man. I told him that the guy getting his guts ripped out, that's the demon. And Nishingadev is the, you know, God. And so he was like, I thought it was the other way around. And just so many examples, just like Lord Shiva, you know, giving a Bhagavatam class with his wife on his lap. And, you know, we judge externally. So all the scripture essentially teaches us how to respect, you know, all people in all circumstances, because we can't judge persons, places, things, or circumstances externally. So the safest route is to, you know, if we not in a position to, you know, that's why it's much harder to be a leader, where you have to kind of judge and distinguish. So for anyone, you know, being a leader is probably, you really don't want that position because it's very difficult. And so we always have to be respectful. And one last point I would like to mention is that normally when we get a Govardhan Shila or we get some Jagannath Prasadam from India, we're always very careful to honor and respect it, naturally, right? But actually, you know, that's because they're connected to the pastimes of the Lord. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmane Gavihasini, etc. He says that a truly educated person sees the spirit, soul, and the body, and therefore has the ability to respect everybody because they could see the sacredness, just like a Shalagram Shila, the sacredness of, you know, every living being, is that they're connected actually with the pastimes of the Lord. And for me, I felt that that's kind of helped me if I think in these terms, that everyone's like a, you know, Shalagram Shila, Govardhan Shila, but for us, it's easier to respect a sacred, you know, Shila because they don't talk back to us. So I've noticed that, but these things, principles, I always, you know, from my various teachers, I've learned to keep these in my mind all the time, is that, you know, we always have to be careful with devotees because there's no better association, you know, in the world except devotee association. That other associations, you know, 10 times, 1,000,000 times worse than the devotee. So we always have to keep it in mind, like, just let things go, forgive. And otherwise, there's no meaning to these words, forgiveness, tolerance, mercy, unless there was disagreement. So anyway, Hare Krishna.
Yeah,
You have anything
association with devotees is certainly just awesome. I spent some time away from temple, and it was hellish, especially after like knowing how people are supposed to behave. Then to like go out into the world and try to interact with people the way you used to before is so very difficult. I mean, it was, I guess, because of my offensive nature that I took some time away, but that really was like, it really drove home the point that there is no happiness out there. So. And I just wanted to read this one thing. This is all leading up to the appearance of Lord Nrsingadev, which is, it's going to be awesome to read this with you guys. But, you know, like looking at the symptoms of Prahlad Maharaj, like what would we think of him? This is verse 37. It says, from the very beginning of his childhood, Prahlad Maharaj was uninterested in childish playthings. Indeed, he gave them up altogether and remained silent and dull, being fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness. Since his mind was always affected by Krishna consciousness, he could not understand how the world goes on, being fully absorbed in the activities of sense gratification. So if we were to come across a child like that, we would call a doctor. But yes, Prabhu?
Thank you for your nice class and for reference from so many books. That's great thing. And here things to discuss in spiritual world, okay, which is this material world is perverted reflection of spiritual world. You know, thing is that to hear the anger, enviness. You know, when we get enviness, it is something very bad. But in spiritual world, also it is there, enviness is there. But that is transcendental. Like for example, there are two types of, gopis. Some, Bhamangi, another is Dakshinangi, left wing, right wings gopis. They have also competitive power. It means, how to serve Krishna better way, They have, like this eagerness. So they have some enviness, but that is transcendental. Mm-hmm. Another thing also to discuss, Srila Prabhupada says, how can you know a devotee is progressing in devotional service? There are two things one has to watch. One is enviness and lust. If these two things is decreasing in the proportion how he is serving, then it is considered that he is progressing. So it's very careful things. And there are these two things.
Yes, and lust, it just seems...
And the jealousy or enviness.
Mm-hmm. Lust, it seems almost impossible to overcome, and it is impossible to overcome without the Vaishnavas and without Krishna's mercy. Like that lust that we feel drives us to do things that we don't even want to do, and it's a reflection of the love that we have for Krishna in this horribly distorted way. So of course it's very intense and difficult to overcome.
Also one more point, in our spiritual life, when someone is progressing, other feels very happy, because in material world, however, when someone is progressing, then we got jealousy, Mm-hmm. But in spiritual life, if someone is progressing in devotional service, other devotees, they feel happy, jubilant. This is the difference. Like in Krishna book, it is written, I think, to best of my memory, there is a simile, I think, Jagadanath, how to remember. That's how a bamboo tree, they feels better when their son, and they like their, what do they call this? When the one plant comes from other, what do you say? That is called, what is that called? Something, there is in botany, there is a nice word, I think, some hybrid system, you can make another, plant from one plant.
Like a graft, maybe?
Yeah, something like that. So the bamboo tree feels better, his flute, he is being made as a flute for Krishna,
Mm-hmm.
Then that way he feels jubilant.
Yeah,
So same way, so that means devotee feels better when he see another devotee is progressing.
Yeah. So this is just another taste of that bhav in the spiritual world, because that sort of thing just, at least for me, it wouldn't have happened in the material world to see someone else succeed and feel happy for them. There's very few cases where I felt like that. But for some reason here, that happens. So I have no explanation besides that it's some hint of a spiritual feeling, perhaps. Anyone else? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki. Thanks. sorry that I missed. I didn't take you on Saturday.
Oh, that was okay. I knew that you like something to do.
Did you happen to find a set of keys somewhere in the temple at all this weekend?
No, but if I find it, I'll try to contact.
Please do.
Yeah.
I hope I'm rambling. Yeah, it did. I still had so many things I wanted to read, so I couldn't remember when to read.
That's what I was gonna bring, like a